Well, greetings everyone, coming to you directly from Madison, Wisconsin. Um, Let me just apologize for being the last person to post on this once again. Um, as I mentioned in my earlier video, I work for the state of Wisconsin in the unemployment office, and we've been working crazy hours just to try to get everybody paid out. So it's cut into my what I used to be able to do school time during the day. I can't do it as much anymore, so I have to either do it very early in the morning or very late at night. Right now it's about 4 o'clock in the morning, and I'm getting ready to go back into work in a minute here. I work from home, so it does help. So I'm actually sitting in my office. What is my office for right now? So the topic today, or the topic of discussion for this week, was the readings that we did dealing with the categories and the causes, both from the metaphysics and from categories. And within that, we're looking at Aristotle's four causes and the 10 categories, which he discusses in some detail in those chapters. Now, me being a history teacher, lifelong history teacher, and historian, I always like to point out to people when I write and when I discuss things that I'm all about context. I like to know the background, I like to know the development, I like to see the evolution, as it were, of the topics that we're discussing. And so when you look at Aristotle, and I used to actually teach this, it seems like in another lifetime, I always would try to do the comparison between Plato and Aristotle, because Aristotle was the student of Plato, likewise Plato was the student of Socrates, and so we like to see the continuation of thought as it went along. And you really have two different schools of thought here. You have Plato, who believed in the world of abstraction and believed in a world of rational thought and being able to use reason to make his ideas work. Whereas you have Aristotle, who really becomes the first empiricist. He's looking at the world as it is. He's looking at the examples as they exist. And you being able to define and to look at the rules that go along and to make logical assumptions and testing and so on. So that's why he's oftentimes referred to as the first scientist. But he observed everything. And this is the whole idea of where the causes and the categories come from. Of primary importance to the causes and the categories was Aristotle's idea of substance. And every one of the videos that I've seen today from all of you discuss the idea of substance, that it is the thing as it is, it's the individual whole thing. There are no predicates to it. It is man, it is I, it is horse, as Aristotle points out. And so that's what we're dealing with when we're dealing with substance in particular. And then to try to define or to go along with that idea of substance, that individual person, that individual thing, that individual being, Aristotle comes in and brings in the other categories. He will look at a substance and look at it within its quantity. He'll look at it within its quality. He'll look at it in its relation with other things. He looks at it with its idea as its place in the universe, its physical place, its time in space, its position in space, its state, the actions that are acted upon it and the actions that it takes, and the affection, or what he calls the passion, as it were. And so by using those categories, we're able to define or to make as good a definition as possible as to what a thing is, what a substance is. So it's the categories that are interacting with the substance. And this was Aristotle's way of observing the universe and looking at everything along those. Along with this comes the notion of cause. Well, what causes these things to come into effect, into motion? And so this is where the four causes come in. And again, from the videos that I saw from everyone else, everyone did a wonderful job. We look at the different causes and the different examples of causes. And of course, Aristotle tends to fixate on man-made objects. The chair is always, the statue is always, the bronze and so on is always the thing that he looks at the most. So when we look at the causes, we're looking at, the material cause, That is, what comes into what are the what are the things that make a thing, a substance. From there we get the formal cause. What is the pattern? What is the shape? What is the physical appearance? What is the nature? What is its build? We have the efficient cause, which is what is that which causes it to come into being? What is it that builds it? Is it the sculptor, as Aristotle talks about? Is it the carpenter or whoever is making the chair? And there were several great examples. I particularly love love the sweet potato pie. When I did this, and if I had more time, I'd love to do this, but I don't even have the serious source. I used to use Legos and Lincoln Logs when I used to teach this with students, depending on the age. I've taught this to students that were 14 or 15 years old, right up to adults in their 30s, these concepts of Aristotle and Plato. And so those things were always fine. Plato was another thing we used to use, because we also used, it was teaching Plato with Plato, and we used to do that a lot as well. But then the final thing is the final cause, and that is the end, that is the telos, as they like to say. This is also looking upon, or why we call this Aristotle's teleology, and going on from there. And so we have the causes which are bringing things into existence, and Aristotle posits that you can look at anything, any inanimate object, any animate object. You can look at a person, you can look at anything, and you'll be able to find the four causes within that. And then as far as those causes bringing substance into existence, then we can also define substance as its role in space, as its role in time, and so on, with the categories. And so I've gone on a little bit too long with this. But again, in keeping with the idea of context, you see the development from Plato being, with the forms and being very abstract, leading all the way to Aristotle, who now is very concrete and is very consistent with what he does and what he looks at, more of a rational or reasonablistic type of way with his empirical thought, ultimately leading to his concept of teleology and so on. And what you'll begin to see with this, if we can look further, if we look into the future with this, what I began to see as I started reading through this, and it's been a while since I've read this, and this is not the easiest material to read. That was always the complaint that I had from many students of any age, and that's why examples were so good to use. The main problem is it's just hard to read. The language is a little outdated, and so it's a little more difficult to read. But as I read through it, and it's been a while, especially when you get to the concept of substance, which is the ousia as he discusses it, I have the advantage of knowing some of this and being able to look forward. But what you begin to see is this motion of Aristotle deep into later life of the church. We've got Aristotle, who we can tell if we understand the concept of ousia and substance and consubstantiality. We're looking forward to Nicaea. We're looking to Chalcedon, and the definition of the relationship between the Father and the Son. We're looking later into the thoughts of some of the writings of Augustine, certainly into the thoughts of Anselm, and of course, as we're going to be looking here, into the writings of Thomas Aquinas, who brings Aristotle, or is attempting to bring Aristotle more solidly into the realm of thought and into the realm of reason, as it's opposed, or as it's directed through spirit, as it's directed through faith. And so you're beginning to see the foundation here of what's going to be happening as we move further and further, ultimately into the Middle Ages, with the whole concept of the divine and the relationship of the divine with mankind. So there, I've wasted 10 minutes of your time, but I anticipate your commentary. I look forward to it. I hope you all have a blessed day. Be safe, and we'll talk soon.